What's up, Hobby Lobby? So here I am, minding my own business, doing what I do. I already got my videos prepped for the week. Everything's going good. And Ben Farmer Jr., for those of you who don't know who Ben Farmer Jr. is, I've had him on my show a few times. And we also have a podcast together called Two Sides, One Coin. And we got into a little debate about race when it comes to the left and the right. And Thomas Sowell came up, and I made the claim that no serious academic person has really actually debunked the thing that Thomas Sowell has pointed out in his books. And Ben Farmer Jr. sent me a video, apparently of a guy who supposedly had debunked Thomas Sowell. So I just decided, what the hell? I got to get on camera and I got to talk about this. And I want to see if this guy can really debunk Thomas Sowell. And I'm just gonna point it out. Look, I'm a big Thomas Sowell fan. I've read a lot of his books, and I will continuously read more and more of his books. I think it's very insightful. But we're gonna see if this guy can actually hold up, if he is actually even qualified to try to debunk Thomas Sowell in the first place, and see what he has to say and what his arguments are, and if they actually make any cohesive sense to be, taking jabs at Thomas Sowell. So that's what we're gonna do here, and I really look forward to doing this, and I hope y'all are really excited and y'all enjoy my little reaction or my breakdown of this guy debunking Thomas Sowell.
1 in a million to 1 billion. Too hot to be in the kitchen, I'll end up melting the ceiling.
All right, so let's jump right into this because, I got to see what this guy's talking about.
All right, people. I keep getting emails from people telling me to dismantle some of the arguments of this Thomas Sowell guy, and apparently
Thomas Sowell. The guy can't even pronounce his name properly, but that's a quick jab. Means nothing.
He's one of the foundational thinkers of the right and blah.
You can tell he's not somebody who's actually even read any of Thomas Sowell's books for the most part.
Blah, blah. Okay, let's do it. Every time I see shit from this guy, he comes off stupid as fuck. So, yeah.
Some guy sitting on his camera in front of his closet is really insulting Thomas Sowell, a very great mind, academic, one of the most intelligent Black individuals of our time. And he's going to sit there and make that claim. This is definitely not somebody I would assume has taken Thomas Sowell seriously enough to go actually see what he has to say. But I'm pretty sure this guy is going to just watch a interview or a debate with Thomas Sowell and try to pick it apart in such an unnecessary fashion without really taking in consideration his real arguments that are spelled out in deep detail in his books.
Oh, wait. Sorry, we're going to be amicable, okay? Hello, fellow my fellow conservatives. I am just a disillusioned liberal, and I just had some questions about the works of the man Thomas Sowell. Okay? Here, so let me think about this. Hello, make sure to subscribe.
I think we're talking at cross purposes. On the one hand, we're talking about results.
So this is Thomas Sowell dismantles egalitarianism. Okay, let's do it.
That we're hoping for. On the other hand, we're talking about processes that we're setting in motion. You're saying, should we hope for certain kinds of lessening of inequality and so on? The real question, the political question is, shall we set in motion certain processes because we hope for that? And do those processes enhance or reduce freedom?
Which is a perfectly reasonable way to frame that argument. Now, what Thomas Sowell right now is doing is critiquing the fact that we asked on one hand about inequality and what should be done about it. But the real question is, based on the inequalities that we see, what policies and what actions should we take to actually make that possible? And that's where we get into the actual meat of the situation and circumstances, which a lot of people do not actually have real implications behind the words that they say when they talk about inequality. They don't really necessarily know how to define why inequality is where it is in every single aspect that they wish to change. For example, I'll give you the fact that there are certain fields where Black people are not represented in. For example, let's say hockey. In hockey, there's not as many Black people that's representative of the population when it comes to Black people in hockey. That's mostly white people in that sport. Now, one would ask, okay, is that due to a disparity, or is that actually due to the fact that most Black people don't find an interest in it, or that most Black people don't grow up in an environment where they actually play hockey, therefore that's why they don't go into that field? And you can do that across many other fields, but it's not just as simple as some kind of disparity or some kind of discrimination.
And I think the argument that Milton is making, certainly the argument that I would make, is that the attempt at doing these things. And it doesn't really matter. It's a complete straw man to talk about absolute inequality.
Yes, it is.
No.
Absolutely. Throughout the film, this is the straw man he brings up in order to say how ridiculous to have absolute equality. And then he goes on to say how ridiculous to have
my
absolute
whole point is
homogenization as well.
as a result, you see, that you set up processes whose end result may not be any more or less inequality than exists now. But the question is, those processes may indeed reduce freedom greatly.
Okay, so there are two types of equality: equality of outcome and equality of I guess of process. Equality from a sort of foundational position. So this,
let me try to clear up what he's saying, because apparently he can't give it to you straight enough for you to actually digest it. It's equality of outcome means that everybody should have the same outcome depending on the actual representation of their population within a certain community or within a certain country. And the other talk of equality comes with equality of opportunity, whereas you're not discriminated against or mistreated based on any characteristic that you may hold, which does not actually determine your ability to perform a certain task or do a certain job.
this is the some people call it equity versus equality. Oh, equality of opportunity. Thank you. Yeah. Though honestly, I would argue even equality of opportunity is kind of a misnomer, because nobody has the same opportunities in life. It's more, have we done everything we can to ensure that everyone's getting a fair shake, a fair chance at an equal outcome? Not that everyone has an equal outcome. That's not possible. But everyone has access to the same basic freedoms and processes.
Which is not inherently possible either. If you want to talk about equality of opportunity, I'm 100% for you. If you are pursuing a certain outcome and you want to be able to put forth your best foot to actually obtain that and accomplish that, then there should be no one on the other end inhibiting you from doing so. But that's not to say that there aren't going to be situations in life that necessarily hinder you from getting into that place. For example, if you are not intelligent enough to go to Harvard, you still have the right to apply to Harvard and put forth your best effort. But if you don't meet that criteria or that bar, then that necessarily is something that hinders you from actually having that opportunity.
Now, here's the same conservative grift that gets played every single fucking time I hear one of these idiots open their stupid fucking mouths, okay?
Okay, here is somebody who tries to insult conservatives without even putting up a valid argument beforehand to explain why he feels that way about conservatives in the first place. Now, I'm really interested to see exactly how he's going to, fluff this up or try to make it make sense, because I highly doubt that he's going to be able to do so at this point, especially with somebody who takes the time to insult somebody before he can actually present an argument that actually proves that that person is the insult that he's about to present.
The left claims to want equality. What do they mean by that? Do they mean equality of outcome, where we're all exactly the same?
Here's the straw man argument. He talks about Thomas Sowell, but at the same time, he's setting up a straw man argument of what conservatives actually believe and actually think.
Well, that's impossible. Equality is impossible. This is I hear it every single fucking time. It's insane how often they do this. It's, well, that can happen, actually, obviously. Nobody, let me be perfectly clear about this, nobody talks about equality of outcome.
You're a freaking liar, and you're a moron, and you're a fool. And I'm going to explain it, and I'm going to back it up right here, right now. There are popular politicians such as Joe Biden, such as Kamala Harris, such as Nancy Pelosi, serious people within our actual government who talks about equity. Equity. What does equity actually mean? Equality of outcome. They teach these things in school now. So to say that nobody is talking about that, you're a liar.
Nobody does. Absolutely nobody. Nobody. Zero people do.
Maybe not you.
Okay? When we're talking about equality of outcome, the concept of equality of outcome is this nebulous, dystopic like concept that nobody seriously advocates for in politics.
That's a lie. When you actually look at the reasons why people talk about equity and why people talk about equality of outcome, is because there are disparities within certain communities, within certain structures and governments, officials, and business, where we don't see the same statistics represented amongst these groups of people. For example, there may be 13 to 14% of the population which is African American, and therefore they would conclude that why don't we see 13 to 14% represented in Congress or the Senate, or when it comes to federal jobs, or when it comes to businesses? Why aren't women represented at the top CEO positions in businesses? See, the whole argument is stemmed on outcome. Why are we seeing these disparities? And then they'll blame these things on discrimination, the patriarchy, things of that sort to explain it away. But that's not necessarily the truth. So if we're not talking about equality of outcome, which this fool is saying that they're not, why is there such a big push to see equal representation? We hear equal representation all the time. So we are talking about equality of outcome.
Nobody does. When people talk about equality, people are talking about equality of opportunity, equality of access, equality of process. That's what people are talking about. Very simply, if you are born in this world, it is best that everyone have basically the same shot at being able to succeed. Does that mean everyone will succeed? No, of course not, obviously. Even in some perfect communist world or whatever, like where everyone's super perfectly equal or whatever, there will still be differences in people's performance. There will still be differences in people's.
This is not a debunking of Thomas Sowell. This is not somebody who is taking seriously Thomas Sowell's arguments. He took a little clip of Thomas Sowell and now he's trying to expound upon it and tell conservatives or tell Thomas Sowell exactly what they're talking about. But he has not really taken seriously the arguments, and it's very clear.
Outcomes. And I think that's a beautiful thing, by the way. I don't want to be exactly like anyone else. Nobody does. Everybody likes the variety in humanity that they see as a product of inequality of outcome. Everybody likes that. Nobody wants to be exactly the same height, strength. But the thing is, the equality of outcome is such a stupidly impossible, undesirable concept. Nobody's going out to bat for it.
I would agree with him on that. That is stupid, but he's lying. Like I pointed out, he's lying. Everybody, I implore you. You do not have to hear it from a conservative's mouth. You don't have to go to a conservative pundit. You can see it from the lips of these politicians who talk about equity, who talks about outcomes, talking about equal representation. Look it up. It does not matter. You don't even have to really look too hard to find it being talked about. It's a big debate about it. What is he talking about?
So when people like Thomas over here are like, well, you have this thing called, you have it called equality of outcome. Nobody's talking about this. And when people who pretend to be intellectuals waste any of their time on this idea,
people who pretend to be intellectuals, the fact that he is not even admitting that Thomas Sowell is a serious academic, somebody who spent most of his life studying these things, writing books about these things, researching these things, looking at the data and the statistics, and to say the fact that he would even take the time to say that it's just beyond me, and it's idiocy at its finest.
What they're trying to do is give you the false impression that there's some other political entity, the left, that does care about this, and their dystopic vision will reign and destroy all of America as we know it. No, nobody talks about this.
Man.
Go beyond the question of equality and put it more generally, that any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom, because whatever the government wishes to ascribe to any group, whatever place, to use the phrase that was very common in the South, that blacks should have their place, whatever place the government is going to assign to people, that place will not coincide. That place will not coincide either with what all those people are doing or with how others perceive all those people, because there's too much diversity among human beings.
This point is actually so stupid, it's actually unfathomable to me that he would attempt to make this.
So what Thomas Sowell is saying, before this idiot tries to dismantle whatever crap that he thinks Thomas Sowell is saying, what Thomas Sowell is saying, that because there is so much diversity within any group, specifically the black group, when the government decides that it wants to interfere and try to direct that into a certain field or to a certain outcome, what you are doing in, i.e., you're restricting freedoms. And the reason that you're restricting freedoms is you're telling people that though you may desire to do other things, we need you to do these things. So we're going to artificially induce some kind of factor into your community or into the environment to push people or nudge people into a direction that they wouldn't averagely go, given the freedom to choose so. And that's what he's saying. So people who say that we need more black people as doctors or scientists, one would have to ask, the only way for you to get that outcome is to set up an environment that basically forces black people to go into certain fields in order to reach that outcome that you're trying to get without it naturally taking place, which restricts freedoms. I don't see what the problem with that is. It's just 1 + 1 = 2. You cannot get an outcome by artificially forcing people to choose one outcome over the other. You can't do that without reducing freedoms.
So what he's essentially arguing right now is that anytime any sort of differentiated status is given to a certain group of people, it's dumb because there's diversity amongst people. This is an idiotic perspective. I have no idea
That is not what he said.
what these two things have to do with one another. So
Because you are a moron.
Sowell is a conservative and thus must necessarily simp for corporations at every conceivable opportunity. What he's arguing for here is any sort of privileged position established by the government in any sense is actually an attempt to enforce equality of outcome, and that it's unequitable and it reduces human freedoms because there are so many differences between individuals that to try to enforce a categorization of like that upon them is to, I don't know, bring about bad outcomes. Here's the problem. First of all,
bring about bad outcomes. No, it restricts freedom, like he said. Nobody said that the outcome would necessarily be bad. What he's saying is that it goes directly in contradiction of freedom, because if people want to freely choose what they want to do, if the government has a hand in trying to direct that outcome, the only other possibility to get that outcome is by, setting up an artificial environment which people have to abide by in order to get that outcome.
The government is not the only institutions that put people into categories. Advertisers do that. Corporations do that. Insurance agencies do that. And also, the circumstances of your birth do that.
But the government is the only one that he named who has the ability to do it by force. Yeah, companies can do these things, but yet they cannot force you to have a certain outcome. Companies cannot put a gun to your head or threaten you with jail or fines if you do not comply with their notion of what the outcome should be. None of those things can. Only the government can do that, and the government has the will and the power to do so.
The idea that people are on a completely level playing field from ground set and then the government is the one that fucks with the scales is a complete libertarian lie. It's not true.
So the government doesn't mess with the scales. Let me ask you, anybody who's out there worried about let's say the capitalism, for example, there's crony capitalism where the government actually works with corporations and allow corporations to get certain exemptions or certain rights or freedoms that can allow them to dictate how they survive or how to compete in the actual free market. So when he says that the government can't do that, when the government doesn't have the ability to make that happen, he's lying. The government has been for decades inserting their own will into the free market, inserting their own will on certain communities with welfare, affirmative action, with so many different programs. Even when it comes to college and universities and subsidizing and paying certain fees or whatever, which allows colleges to raise their prices so high that puts people in massive debt. Like, the government has an active role in these things, and it does have an impact on communities. What is he talking about?
People are not born in equal positions. People are born to poor and wealthy families, to good and bad school districts, in neighborhoods which may or may not have good job opportunities, to parents who may or may not, by the way, be good parents. There are forms of inequality that aren't even products of racism or sexism or of economic differentiation. Sometimes it can be as simple as my parents were good to me and yours were not. Sometimes it's that simple.
Sound like a conservative to me. If you get that, then why isn't the message to be talking to parents or trying to encourage people to be better parents or trying to encourage people to raise their children a certain way? Why isn't the message ever on that? Because we know that statistically these things matter. When it comes to having a father in the home or a two-parent household and two incomes, highly increases a child's likelihood of graduating college or going to college in the first place or not going to prison, and so many other things, and being successful in life and not having children out of wedlock or having children before they are the age of being able to take care of them. So many different things that we know statistically matter. Why isn't the message focused on that? It's always focused on outcomes. It's always focused on how do we get the numbers to represent the population as it seems, because that's the only way for us to truly feel like things are equal.
There is no level playing field. The idea of there being some sort of natural state of man where everyone exists on a flat plane and then it's the government that fucks with that is it's just a complete lie. It's not true. It's never been true. And even if that was true, corporations also do that. So do cultural forces. When a cultural
So are you going to tell me that the culture has an ability to affect that? Companies have the ability to affect that. But out of all the things that you listed, government has no effect on any of that at all. Come on, man. Think about it.
institution like racism disprivileges black people and privileges white people, that is an imposition now that has lessened human freedom.
Well, let's talk about systemic racism within the government. There's a claim that the government is statistically racist. So if the government doesn't have the ability to affect outcomes in that way, then why is it that people have such a problem with systemic racism? You have to be able to figure that out. Two of those things can't be true at the same time. Either it's a problem that actually affects people and the government has the ability to do so, or it doesn't. Make up your mind.
If the government has the opportunity to bring those back into line, human freedom goes back to being enhanced. There's this implication here that any bias
So now he's saying that the government has the ability to bring those things back in line.
or restriction, which is imposed by a non government entity, actually enriches human freedom, and any which is imposed by the government reduces human freedom. Now, don't get me wrong, the government can reduce human freedom just fine. Obviously, a libertarian.
Doesn't seem like you.
But there are ways in which the government can impose power to actually enhance freedom. Like, for example, welfare. Countries with higher welfare have higher wealth mobility. Did you guys know that?
See, now he's equating wealth with freedoms. The ability to make a lot of money or to be financially, taken care of doesn't mean that you have increased freedoms. It may so be that if you have more wealth, that you somehow have more opportunities, but that doesn't mean that you have the same freedoms. For example, you could live in a society where you don't have the freedom of speech, but you can still be wealthy. That doesn't mean that you have the freedom of speech. You can restrict freedoms and get a certain outcome, and therefore everybody's better off financially, but you can still be less free. You can not have the freedom to own a firearm. You can have the freedom not to go to a certain neighborhood. You can have a lot of freedoms restricted and still be doing well off.
America's shit. You go over to the Scandinavian
Here
countries.
we go with
These
this.
countries have way better wealth mobility and better welfare. Wealth mobility is almost a direct indicator of economic freedom. And it's not
See, now he's talking about economic freedom. Did Thomas Sowell ever talk about economic freedom? That wasn't even what the argument is about. This guy's not debunking Thomas Sowell. He's going on a rant about what he thinks that the left or the left is actually saying versus what the right represents them is saying. But he's not really debunking Thomas Sowell at all. He's switching the goalposts here. And the reason he's switching the goalposts is because he knows that when people talk about freedoms, they're not necessarily just talking about economic freedom. And that's one of the mistakes that the left makes. They think that economic freedom is somehow equal to all freedoms. And it's not necessarily the case. It's not.
perfect over there, but it's better than it is over here. Do
Yeah,
you know
go
why?
there.
Because if you're born poor in America, you're likely to stay poor. Welfare is a mechanism that enhances human freedom.
Most of the millionaires and billionaires that we have in this country actually gain their own wealth. More and more people have been lifted out of poverty in the world due to American policies and interactions in the world. Not only is that the case, we also got to look at the fact that what we consider to be poverty today was not necessarily poverty 60 years ago, 100 years ago. The poverty line shifts and changes as we advance as a society. And more people who were up in that middle class have probably made it up to the upper middle class or higher. And a lot of people who are elderly actually tend to be doing well off the more they go in society. America has a good track record when it comes to producing wealth. Now, if you want to argue that the wealth income gap has widened over time, you can make that argument. The studies bear that out. That statistically is true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because the wealth gap is spreading out, that people are somehow becoming poorer and poorer. That's not necessarily the truth. And if anybody wants to look at the better angels of our nature or something like that when it comes to talking about how we've lifted so many people out of poverty and things are much better now than they've ever been throughout history, then I highly recommend it. And I believe his name is I can't think of his name right now. Y'all let me know in the comment section, but the better natures of our angels, the better angels of our nature, or something like that. And it talks about that.
Freedom, because it means the circumstances of one's birth are less capable of preventing them from living an enriching, fulfilling life with equal opportunity to others.
And this guy never will deal with the fact that the government's job is not to do that. The government's job is not to ensure that you have financial wealth or to make sure that you prosper in a certain way. The government's job is not to do that. The government's job is to protect your rights. That means your rights that's spelled out in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. That's the government's job. And they always ignore that fact. And they want to make the government out to be something that it was never intended to do. Whereas other countries, governments are set up in place for different things. And if it allows for them to do certain things, then fine. But you cannot argue with the fact that everybody in this country does not agree with what you think the government's role is. And you have to be able to deal with that honestly. To put up an artificial government and what their role is in order to make your argument sound better is not necessarily the right thing to do, because that's not the government that we have. If you want to change that government and switch it up, go for it. I'm 100% with you, but I'm behind it. If you want to go change it, go for it. If you got the numbers and the will and the power to make it happen, go for it. But other people don't agree with you, and they're going to push back, and they're going to use their freedoms to actually make their statements heard. And you're just going to have to learn to deal with it.
That's a government imposition. Now, that doesn't mean all welfare is good. It still has to be done well, and it will never be done perfectly. The argument will always continue. But the idea that like any kind of government imposition is inherently bad is fucking ridiculous.
See, this is the thing. Sometimes people get on these mics and they get in front of their cameras and they get in front of the people that agree with them, and they believe that they are so right, that they have it all figured out, and that they are somehow more enlightened than the rest of us, especially if you're on a different side of the political fence, right? But here's the thing. Here's a guy that is supposedly going after Thomas Sowell, and yet he's played, what, 2 clips in the last 9 minutes of Thomas Sowell in one conversation. And he's going to make the claim that Thomas Sowell is somehow unintelligent or not academic, or he's going to believe that he has the key and the answers over Thomas Sowell, who has more years of experience, more data, more statistics, more debates, more conversations than this guy has. And he's going to try to sum up Thomas Sowell as a person within these short amount of time. This is the arrogance that we're dealing with. And I'm not accusing of all liberals of being this way or progressives or whatever the case may be. I am not. But this guy specifically, he's doing a disservice to Thomas Sowell's actual argument and really attacking strawmen here.
And by the way, this info like this is explicitly designed to serve the political interests of corporations. There's a reason why they go for this sort of thing.
To maintain any system of ascribed status from the top is going to mean reducing people's freedom across the spectrum. That's the point.
People have an
As I just said, this is obviously a ridiculous point.
ascribed status. It isn't as if government, by its intervention, creates it. People are born into this world in a given sector of a society, and many, many of them are born at the bottom of the society. The argument about equality of results was an argument that was linked to equality of opportunity.
So she just debunked everything that he just said, because she just admitted that there is an argument being had about equality of results. She just said that it's linked to equality of opportunity, but she admits that there is an argument about equality of results, i.e. equity.
Recognized that unless there was a degree of equality in a degree of enough food, enough security, access to education, unless these things were available to all children, then equality of opportunity was merely a mockery. That's why equality of results became an issue, and it became an...
See, she just debunked exactly what this dude was saying. Moron. So here's the thing. I don't think that Thomas Sowell would argue that we don't want better schools. Thomas Sowell is a big advocate for school choice. He's a big advocate for that, and children being able to go to the schools that their parents feel that will best suit them for their success in their future. And Thomas Sowell is a big fan of that. So he cares about education. He cares about, poverty. He cares about people in low income situations. He's not arguing in favor of corporate interests, regardless of what this guy down here is saying. What he is trying to say is that there have been certain programs and certain things put in place for decades to try to help uplift people out of poverty. And yet these things don't necessarily have the outcomes that we intended for it to happen, even if it was good intention, but the results just don't bear that out. And this guy, if he was honestly trying to understand the argument, he would go read Thomas Sowell's books and see how he spells it out and what data he uses to support that position.
An issue for Black people in the United States, and they expressed their concern, whatever the opinion.
You expressed it, damn it. Look.
Damn, wait, why am I even here if she's just fucking owning him? But this video is titled Thomas Sowell Dismantles Egalitarianism. So I guess the people...
How does she own him? How the... This dude.
People who watch this are just kind of dumb? I don't know.
And there he goes, insulting the people who listen to this and watch this. See, this guy is self-righteous and he's up on his high horse, believing that his point of view is the correct one. And he doesn't even need to have a conversation with anybody and see what they're actually saying or to deal with the arguments properly. He just has to invoke what he believes is being talked about and being said and compare it to his beliefs and what he talks about and what he wants and think that he's somehow debunking Thomas Sowell.
Just FYI, this guy studied at the Chicago school under Friedman, the same school and people that supported Pinochet in Chile. Chile, that's the world he wants. Google Chicago boys. Oh, yeah. Just to be clear, when people of these political ambitions actually get hold of governments, fascism is what results. Just to be perfectly clear.
Okay, once again, another straw man. All right. So Thomas Sowell is not somebody who ever sought political power or anything to use his data or statistics to invoke certain outcomes when it comes to the political agenda or to get himself above. Now he talks about fascism. Here's the problem with fascism. Fascism, and when people equate it to the conservative right or things of that sort, in America, the problem that it doesn't hold any water is because the fact that fascism is more based on group ideology. The people who practice fascism were all about blood and soil and things of that sort. Yet there are people on the far right who subscribe to that ideology, but yet for the main part in the mainstream conservative movement and on the right, people are more based on individualism and not collectivism. The collectivism is more on the left side of the fence. So if I'm an individual, why would I ever appeal to fascism or state-owned resources or one big blood and soil issue? It makes no sense. Fascism is not the same as conservatism. And the fact that fascism does not support the free market in a way that conservatism does. Those two things don't align. And I would not tell anybody to equate communism or socialism with the left with a broad paintbrush because it's not true. Most liberals don't adhere to communism. Most liberals are not fans of socialism. That's a fringe. That's the people on the far left. Most liberals are for the free market. They might disagree with how much restrictions or how much taxes or things of that sort, but they're not for socialism. But the problem is that these people get to constantly associate conservatism or the people on the right with fascism, and that's just not true.
It's not some sort of beautiful egalitarian society where all live in freedom. It's the crushing of democratically elected socialists and the elevation of fascists who slaughter people for their political opinions. Thomas Sowell's priority here is not freedom of humans; it is freedom of capital.
Okay. I'm trying to remember the guy's name who wrote the book that I mentioned earlier. It's not coming to me, but I'm gonna put this out here like this. He's talking about freedom of capitalism. Capitalism has done more to uplift people out of poverty, has done more to produce goods and services around the world than any ideology that this guy is associated with. Capitalism allows us to innovate. It allows us the freedom to fail, allows us the freedom to succeed and make our own decisions. Now, if you want to argue that crony capitalism has put a hinder on that and it doesn't actually create a free market system, I will be 100% for you. And I believe that most conservatives would agree that big corporations have an interest in surviving and using their political capital to keep that process going. And that is something that needs to be stopped. But to make the argument that we just want a fascist state where capitalism can run buck wild and just oppress all the people and make the poor poorer, that makes no sense. Many conservatives are poor. Many conservatives don't have millions and millions of dollars or billions of dollars sitting in the bank. That's not the argument.
No, they did not. They did not.
And whatever the opinion
You expressed it,
polls,
damn it. Look. No, they did not. They did not.
They
Damn it.
expressed.
Wait, that's what they clap for? He says, no, you expressed it, damn it, and they clap for that? Who's the audience here?
They expressed their will by their extraordinary participation in a protest movement that began in the late 1950s and didn't end until
I
the
have
1960s.
never.
Intellectuals were not in that protest movement.
You want me to
Black
answer or you want to
people
keep
were
going?
in that protest.
You want me to answer?
Dude, what the fuck is wrong with him? He talked for way longer than her, and he's like mad that she's.
He's not mad. What he is frustrated because of the fact that she's throwing out claims and things that is completely just not true. And he's about to try to respond to her, but she keeps repeating the same point.
Jesus Christ, salty.
I finished.
Good. Black people have never supported, for example, affirmative action, quotas, anything of that sort. Wherever polls have been.
I'm going to need a citation on that. Also, wait, hold on. Even if that was true, nice hit pull. That's not an argument.
They're having a conversation. And also, I want to point out something that when Thomas Sowell is speaking about black people who never supported, black people never really supported affirmative action and things of that sort, there was a large movement of people who wanted black people to have their own things. Black people wanted their own schools. Black people wanted their own banks. We had Black Wall Street. Black people were very open-minded about having their own. I mean, even Malcolm X and people of that sort were talking about black people doing things on their own and not being infringed by white people, but having so. Affirmative action was a compromise. Affirmative action was something to integrate white people into black people into white schools and to get black people in on the same level as white people. It's a comparison between the two. But black people always wanted their own. Even to this day, black people support having black-owned businesses, having black-owned communities, and supporting themselves. That's what black people really, really wanted. So all of this affirmative action and integration and things of that sort was in reality a compromise because white people had those things and they wouldn't allow black people to have them. So black people, the only thing that black people could do is try to get into the same system that white people currently had because they had the resources.
Taking a black opinion on such matters of should people be paid equally or should there be this or that. Black people have never taken a position that you describe.
Wait, black people have never taken the position that they should be paid equally to white people? What the fuck are you talking about?
That's not what he said. I'll rewind it.
Position that they should be paid equally.
Position of should people be paid equally or should there be this or that. Black people have never taken a position that you describe.
Wait, black people have never taken the position that they should be paid equally to white people? What the fuck are you?
What he's talking about, and I'm gonna just point this out. What Thomas Sowell is speaking about, and I just referenced it about black people wanting their own thing. Black people wanted their own stuff. And when we ended up with this situation where black people started making arguments for having the same things as white people in the white people system, this is the problem where it comes in at, where white people on the liberal side, on the left, they are the ones who set the precedent. They are the ones who tell black people exactly what they should fight for, what they should want, what they should desire. And they basically tell black people, I got this. You just follow my lead. Which is why a lot of the things that you see black people adopting over time is something that white people, white liberals adopted first. Feminism was a white woman movement, and it adopted black women into it, and black women went along with it. Many of these movements start off with white agendas and then are pushed down on the black communities. Like I said, black people wanted their own, their Black Wall Street, their black banks. They wanted all of those things, and it was unable to get it. So white people said, hey, well, how about you join our system and join our society and compete with us? But I mean, just look at it. You go to Little Italy, you go to Chinatown. There are so many places where different communities of races have their own thing, and black people wasn't able to have those things. So black people had to default to playing the white man's game, and that's how you ended up in this situation. Now, I will say that I don't 100% agree that black people never asked for those things. I just will make the argument that white people set the prerogative, and black people, out of desperation, went along with it in order to get where they were.
You talking about? Yeah, what is this Uncle Ruckus shit? Like, hey, I'm a black guy. I've met a lot of black people. We don't actually care about being paid the same.
This is why you should read his books, you idiot.
What the fuck is going on right now? I mean, I don't have like polling data on hand. First of all, I don't need to support the popularity of these arguments to actually defend them. Even if nobody on earth defended these arguments, they would still be perfectly valid if their premises could be defended. But even with that being said, you're telling me black people literally fought in the civil rights movement to not be able to be discriminated against in the employment with employment. That was literally what they fought against in large part.
All right. So when it came to the civil rights movement and, black people fighting so they wouldn't be discriminated against, yes, black people should have been able to have the same jobs. Black people should have been able to go to the same banks, get the same loans. Black people should have been able to ride the bus without being sitting in the back. There's a lot of things that black people fought for in the civil rights. It was a very complex movement with different pieces all coming together. There were even civil rights leaders who agreed and disagreed on a wide variety of different issues and how to go about fixing it and getting it taken care of. Now, that's just the way it is. Now, I'm not 100% in disagreement with the guy here, but I really think that Thomas Sowell is pointing to the fact that, just like in his book Black Rednecks and White Liberals, when he pointed out that many black people who came from the South went up to the North and decided to for the Industrial Revolution and things of that sort, and they brought a certain culture with them, and there were wealthy black people doing well off in the North, and at the time they didn't associate their culture with the black Southern Negro. And what ended up happening was white liberals ended up saying, in all due respect, that the Southern black Negro was the true black Negro, and it ended up creating this rift between the wealthy blacks and the poor blacks. And now white people didn't want to stay in the same neighborhoods as any blacks because they all assumed that they were all of the same ilk or the same culture. And what ended up becoming that situation is white liberals have always decided what black person they want to support or which black position that they want to uphold. And we see it even now to this day with the Latinx community. Most Latin people do not consider themselves Latinx, but yet their elitists on the left will call them Latinx and set that prerogative. And we see that a lot. And I think that's what Thomas Sowell is getting at, that it's not necessarily what black people were aiming for. It's just what was given to them, and they had to roll with the punches.
Which includes pay disparity.
So it is not a question of what black people chose to do. It's what you choose to put in the mouths of black people. It's what you choose to produce.
Dude, this is Candace Owens, but 40 years ago. This is the exact same set of arguments. So first of all, he lies and makes up a position of black people, and then he says the person trying to help black people, is the real racist because they're pushing the narrative that black people don't want to be second-class citizens into the mouths of black people.
All right, here's the problem. When I say for myself that I don't want handouts from white people and I don't want white people telling me what I should want, I see it all the time. The moment I start to push back against certain people on the left and what they think black people want, they tell me to shut up and tell me that they're fighting for my freedoms. We experience this all the time. So to say that there aren't white liberals out there telling black people what they should want and how they should behave or what they should desire, that is true. That is true. And this is not Candace Owens 40 years ago or whatever. This is just simply the fact. Thomas Sowell is not Candace Owens, and Thomas Sowell has a better reputation and a better academic background than Candace Owens does. But the fact that he's going to equate them to just like that lets you know that he doesn't really even know who Thomas Sowell really is.
This is the exact same set of arguments. No wonder the conservatives like this guy so much. It's perfect. He's anti-IDPOL, but he'll weaponize IDPOL when it's convenient to him. He talks about the necessity for human freedom, but then he'll use arguments of populism to argue against claims for human freedom. He'll lie about the needs and interests of black people and then claim others are racist when they tell him that that's actually not the case. What a fucking clown, dude. Holy shit.
I don't think he's actually... At this point, I'm just dumbfounded. At this point, why am I doing this? For the life of me, why am I doing this? I would have preferred if he just like read one of Thomas Sowell's book, picked a few arguments, and found some data and statistics to combat that and disprove or debunk Thomas Sowell's claims. But he hasn't taken that route. He decided that he wants to play a video of one debate with Thomas Sowell and completely make up his summarization of Thomas Sowell as a person, as a human being, as an economist, as calling him some kind of political, sellout. And to sum it up, it's just the arrogance.
It is not what any black people have ever said anywhere that you can put your finger on.
No black person has ever said they want equal pay for equal work. Damn, I would love to see a source on that, my dude. I think they had a whole fucking movement about that in large part. He's claiming to speak for all black people. It's extraordinary.
Put into the mouth of the pollsters, as far as I can.
But he's not saying that she's claiming to speak for all black people. You notice that? He didn't go after her for saying what black people wanted. He didn't go after her about that at all. He didn't say anything about what she's telling people what black people want. He didn't say that at all. At all, not once.
And see, look at the leadership of the black community.
Like most people, I have never seen a poster.
If you look at the leadership of the black...
Wait, he claims that the polls support him, and then he jokes about having never actually seen the polls? And they're clapping? That's yeah, if you look at the polls, they'll actually say black people don't care about getting paid equal work. You're forcing that on them, you fucking racist. Oh, I mean, I don't actually look at the polls. Just like, oh, Bates Sowell, Base Sowell, big brain.
Maybe they understand something you don't. Have you ever stopped to consider that? Maybe they know Thomas Sowell more than you do. Maybe they've actually read something that he wrote. Maybe they understand his motivations. Maybe.
But I want to go back to I want to carry it back to the earlier point. Number one, there's no question about what equality of results, if it comes about through a framework of freedom, is a desirable result.
Nobody talks about equality of results. Nobody
We already
talks
talked about this. Yes,
I don't
they
know
do.
why we're continuing to talk about it.
She just was talking about it. The same person that you said is owning him, she admitted to it. What are you talking about, dude?
About this.
Number two.
Oh, yeah. Hello, Milton Freeman. Sorry, I wasn't actually looking. Okay, now I know why the audience is clapping for Sowell. We have fucking Friedman in the audience.
Oh, so now he wants to attack the character of the person hosting the show. And look, for the fact, look, we see this all the time in Bill Maher show and all of that. It comes with the territory. We already know what's up. I don't get angry at the Bill Maher crowd for clapping when he says something that the liberals agree with. That just comes with the territory. Yes, of course, but I don't get angry about it because those people already agree with it. That doesn't necessarily make the arguments wrong.
Argue in the film, I've argued here.
Sorry, one last pause. I want you to understand conservatism has always had one of these. It's vital to undermining the call for equality of minorities. Because it's racist if white conservatives say it, but if a black face says it and they simply affirm him, it's what the community wants. Yeah, of course, obviously. That's why the whole turncoat token shit is so important for conservatism.
Like, y'all don't have y'all Jesse Jacksons and Al Sharptons and people like that who speak for black people as a whole. Get off of your high horse and make it seem like it's just a conservative thing. You liar, you liar, you liar. Yo, liberals are good at having black people speak for all black people. They say black people or the black community or, we as black people or as a black man, like it's a constant thing on the liberal side as well. What are you talking about? If not more.
If a white guy went up there and said, black people don't want this, they would obviously and rightfully be called racist for it. But you find one black guy in a million who will say shit like black people don't care about being paid equally. And then all of a sudden you can get the entire party behind them.
That in point of fact, you get greater equality of actual results by a system under which people are free to achieve unequal results. That for the poor people of the world,
nobody is talking about building a system where people aren't free to achieve unequal results. He just said something tautological. Did you hear that? People are more. This is one of the world's leading minds of laissez-faire capitalism, by the way.
World that Francis Fox Piven was talking about. The most effective mechanism for enabling them to improve their status is not a governmental program which seeks to ascribe to them certain positions, which seeks to provide them with certain goods and services, but a governmental program which tries to eliminate arbitrary barriers to advancement. I would say that in this world.
So he's saying that rather than giving poor people food and money, instead we have less business regulations. Now, this is funny.
That's not what he said. What he's basically is saying that if you want to present a government program to prevent people from discriminating and using their power to oppress people, I'm 100% with you. And that is actually beneficial. What we can't do is create government programs in order to force people to reach a certain level or to fulfill a certain quota, because that definitely does not work in your favor. And it's not better for everyone or these communities. Just like affirmative action, we've known for years now that affirmative action is not necessarily helping black people. But of course, I would argue that, not being able to discriminate against a black person for coming to your business is beneficial, and that is a government program.
For a number of reasons. First of all, we have countries now that have better welfare states than America, and they prove this factually wrong. Lowering barriers to starting up a business doesn't mean shit if you don't have money to.
Are those programs aimed at all the people in that community, or is it aimed specifically for one subset group in that community? Is it specifically aimed at just the black people in that community, or is it aimed at all of the people who are struggling with poverty or things of that sort? What is it aimed at? What is the particular goal? I would like you to explain that and expound upon it, because the details, the devil are in the details. And a lot of these times, people are not actually giving you the full story of what each program is intended for and who is intended for. And these programs that we're discussing right now is specifically aimed and targeted towards the black community having certain outcomes. And that's not the same thing as having programs set to help people in general and those people who fall into a certain category to benefit from them.
Start up a business. He literally is just talking about deregulation here, not giving people startup capital to make businesses. Because again, he simps for large corporations. And you can guarantee, by the way, the people inspired by Milton Friedman, the deregulation that takes place is not for small mom and pop companies. It's for big oil corporations, okay?
Even the restrictions that you put on businesses benefit the big corporations as well. When you start to say, well, if you have a certain amount of employees, you have to pay certain benefits to your employees, or if you say that, oh, companies might have to get through all of this red tape for these to build a business and stuff, guess what? The big corporations have the capital to do those things, but the small businesses don't. So it can work both ways, dude. It can actually, regulations and restrictions can actually help small businesses as well, and hurt big businesses, help big businesses, hurt small businesses, help big business, little businesses. I'm sorry, I'm getting all discombobulated.
It is, trust me, when this guy talks about deregulation, he is not talking about making it easier for some fucking low-income black family in Harlem
Trust him, because he knows.
to start a fucking coffee shop. He's talking about the ability for the United Fruit Company to invade Latin American countries and set up fucking banana republics.
Because he's a mind reader and he clearly understands this guy's motivation and exactly what he wants, because he'll benefit from it as well as anybody else and any upwardly white person, because black people won't benefit from it either way.
So they can get better prices off the fruit they buy from the farms that they till with slaves. So yeah, like we're dealing with a completely different ballpark here. But again, additionally, this is just factually incorrect. No, if you want people to have a better shot at succeeding in life, they need to be provided certain basic provisions with.
Not by the government. See, that's the thing. That's not the government's job, man. That's not the government job. And you know what? I would invite him to put his money where his mouth is. I would like for him to go out and support a family, a low income family. I would like him to go out there, and I would like him to provide all their food for them, pay their bills, give them a place to stay. And I would argue that he do those things. He's such an advocate for it. I would argue that he does it because I'm all about individualism and I'm all about taking self responsibility and putting your money where your mouth is. I would argue that you go and do those things if you really believe that that will give them a shot. Now, there are a lot of people with a lot of money who still make a lot of mistakes. So being wealthy does not necessarily mean that you're going to be the best human being or be better off mentally or whatever the case may be. What we're saying is we want to create an environment where people have the ability to navigate in what way they choose. I'm all about not putting barriers in people's way. But you're saying that the government should be in an active role of giving people lifestyles, providing people food, for providing people homes and houses, telling people where they can and can't go to school at. The government should have a hand in dictating where you can work, how you can work, how much you can work, and all of those things. That's what you're arguing.
Regards to education and economic opportunity, and it's really that simple.
That's simple.
Leading mind, by the way.
Nobody calls you
The greatest source of inequality has been special privileges granted by government. That government, you may talk.
Yes. The greatest source of inequality has been affirmative action and welfare.
No, but it's been Jim Crow laws. It's been slavery. Let's not act like the government hasn't had a hand in actually enforcing inequalities for a long time. So the government going through and trying to fix something it broke in the first place is not necessarily better. It's not necessarily a strike for government. All they're doing is trying to fix the problem they started in the first place. People try to act like the government is just all be all, like the government is only a force for good. No, the government is a horrible piece of crap a lot of times than when it wants to be. The industrial military complex, there are so many things that the government has their hands in that are not good and efficient at doing. And sometimes companies are better at that. That's just the honesty of it. And in some cases, companies are not. But we have to be able to draw a clear line of what the government's role is in your life and what they should be doing about it. And at the moment you start to say that the government's job and role is to guarantee that everybody has a safety net, that they cannot fail, that they cannot hit rock bottom, that they can't take risks that will ultimately put them in bad circumstances and situations, we are limited when it comes to resources. And yes, we have a lot of resources that are wasted that could go to helping low income families and things of that sort. And I'm all about helping low income families or whatever the case may be. But to make it seem as if when the government decides to pick winners and losers, that they're somehow noble for that. No, it's not always that clear cut. There are, like Thomas Sowell says, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs.
You can argue that one of the greatest forms of inequality has been the government imposing racial inequality on the population, which is totally true if that's the case. But he's arguing against ways of fixing the consequences
Now
of
he's
those
not even
impositions
dealing
of
with Thomas
racism.
Sowell right now, so
A great deal. There may be a lot of talk about how we're going to eliminate inequality. But if you look at, go back to your case of Britain, is there any doubt that one of the effects of governmental intervention in Britain has been to create new opportunities for special classes? That the way to get wealthy in a...
I don't care about this. We're here for Sowell, not for Friedman.
So
First of all,
Thomas
he's
Sowell.
dead, Lamau. Hey, yeah, if his ideas were so good, how is he dead, huh? Second of all, this is actually the first full video of Sowell I've ever seen, and he kind of comes off like a smug fucking moron.
The first video he ever saw of Thomas Sowell. See, this is my problem. If you're going to make a video talking about somebody, I would implore you to do some research, to at least give the person a fair shake. But no, you want to jump straight in head first, attacking somebody. So you don't know what he's standing on. You're not dealing with his stats. You're not dealing with his data. You're not dealing with his research. You're not dealing with his history as an academic. You're not dealing with any of those things. And I would argue that the people up there debating him right now are more qualified to have this discussion about him and what the things that he put forward than you are. But no, you're going to quickly jump on your computer and you're going to make a freaking video to try to get some clout by going after a very intellectual man, not knowing really barely anything about him. You can't even pronounce his name right.
I'll look at some of his later content some point in the future.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he just kind of looks like an idiot. I mean, these arguments are incredibly fucking vacuous. Like? There's absolutely no reason to believe they're any, like, this is just like YouTuber shit. Sowell's arguments. This video is entitled "He Destroyed Egalitarianism," and in the contents of this video, the only thing that he did was conflate equality of opportunity with equality of outcome, and then say that black people.
The woman that he said that he agreed with, that was owning Thomas Sowell, said it herself that equality of result was tied to equality of opportunity. She said it herself, and you had no critique of that. I wonder why. Why did you tend to overlook that? Yet you want to focus on Thomas Sowell and things he said. Yet you're taking this video completely out of context because you have no context, because you don't know who Thomas Sowell is. You never read any of his books and taking him seriously. So why should anybody take you seriously, my guy?
Actually don't want to be paid equally for fair work. That's it.
And that's what
2 minutes of this video was him speaking, and he embarrassed himself every time he opened his mouth, and that's all it takes for these dumb fucks to go, oh, you got him. This is a Sowell video about black people. I don't know.
This dude.
I need to take these one at a time because this guy is like lethally fucking stupid. Thomas Sowell, Race and Economics. Oh, is he like old man here? No, still, we're back in 1984. He's still doing stuff today. You know, he's still doing stuff today. Sowell, he's like this ancient moron. All
right, y'all. I'll let y'all decide for yourselves. I'm not gonna listen to this crap anymore. This guy is a freaking lunatic. He's definitely not meant to be taken seriously. He's some guy sitting in his house, like I'm sitting in my house, but yet at least I take the time to actually try to understand my opponent, to actually hear them out, to see exactly what their history is, what their academic success is, what time and effort they put into coming to the conclusions that they have. And I try to take people with with some kind of grain of salt, because of course there's always things to push back on, things to disagree with. But this right here, this guy is not doing his due diligence. He's not taking the argument serious enough. He pulled one random video from Thomas Sowell and decided to hang his whole hat on who he thought Thomas Sowell is and who he was. He insulted him. Not only did he take the time to insult Thomas Sowell, he took the time to insult anybody who supports Thomas Sowell's work or quotes Thomas Sowell or actually read Thomas Sowell, and called them all kind of nasty names. And that's what I do not forgive. That's what I do not understand or respect at all. It's one thing to take him seriously and then come to a proper conclusion based on debunking actual claims that he really made with actual statistics, data, or research, and to show why you're right. And then if people hear your argument and realize that they still want to support something that's idiotic, then I can understand you might take an insult here and there and taking a jab at people, but just the nastiness, coming out of this guy's mouth should not be taken seriously. And look, I'm more than open, dude. If you want to have a conversation, I would love to have you on here. We can have a debate about every single last one of these things. I know you made this video about a year ago, but listen, I'm calling you out. If you want to have a conversation, come on. If y'all know this guy, tell him Javier said, what's up? Come get at me. Period. All right, y'all. That's it. Like I say, peace and glory, everybody. If you watch this far, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. Till next time, I'm out.
1 in a million to 1 villain. Too hot to be in the kitchen, out in the melting the ceiling.